Daisy Jones and the Six. It is a, you would describe it as a, sorry, I just pulled my earphones out and it's made my screen go wonky. It would describe it as a band biopic, a fictional band biopic. So the Six are a Pittsburgh band in the late 60s, early 70s, and they're sort of making a bit of a name for themselves on like the sort of, they've made a success for themselves in their own like Pittsburgh, and they've sort of they're touring, they're doing well, and they want to sort of bring them over to like the West Coast to sort of make an album, and they've got an agent, and they're starting to make a bit of noise. And one of the lead singers, played by Sam Claflin, he is like a proper rock star. You know, he's got the looks, he's got the lifestyle, he's into drinks and drugs and into girls, and he's like this creative force. He writes the music, he's really into everything, and when the band gets really successful, he really goes off the rails, and he sort of redeems himself through his marriage. His wife sort of supports him and backs him up, so if he goes sort of clean, and he writes these songs about his wife. And one of the songs, which is really quite moving, they say, this is a great song, but we think it needs two voices. It needs a woman's voice on it. It's not just what, it'll change the dynamic of this song. And so then they are introduced to this sort of LA wild child called Daisy Jones. Now, Daisy Jones was the daughter of rich parents who basically neglected her. So from the age of about 14, she's been sort of roaming around on her own, and she ended up in basically the music bars in Los Angeles on the Strip. And she has become a bit of a force in her own right. She started off just like just following the bands and getting involved in the bands and getting involved in the whole music scene. But then she started writing her own music, and she was sort of challenged. Yeah, you need to create your own voice, and you'll have your own sort of experience. And they think the guy who sort of sees her sing thinks she'd be a really good fit for joining the Six on this one record. And it turns out that this one song is a massive hit. And so they say, well, you've got to build on this momentum that you've had this one song. So we think that Daisy Jones and the Six, these two entities, should come together and make this seminal album. And this is the story of this band and this album. And it's set basically 20 years after this album. And it's all the people who are involved, like the singer, Daisy Jones, and all the members of the band are being interviewed by this photojournalist, a documentary maker, basically, interviewing about the couple of summers of when they were making this album. And this album is sort of becomes semi-autobiographical, so that it involves all the different tangled relationships in the band, like Daisy Jones and her. Or not, well, it's not like a relationship, because Billy Dunn, he is married with a child, but they are this sort of, they're so alike that they become like this creative powerhouse. And then other relationships within the band involve different band members that some of them are open, some of them are secret. And it's basically about the making of this one seminal album that in this one summer became the soundtrack of the year, and it created this huge buzz. And then suddenly Daisy Jones and the Six just disappeared. They never made enough.
Is this a true story, Sharon, or fictional?
It's a complete fictional story. But you probably recognise there are parallels to some bands that we've heard of, where they have these relationships, they make these huge albums, and it sort of describes their lives in a bit maybe too close a detail. It's only when you look back at them you go, actually, we were reeling a lot through our music that we probably didn't aware of, or if we were aware of it, we probably weren't aware that what an impact this would have, a la Rumours.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's
I
clear
see.
parallels between this fictional band. So this fictional, the whole thing about this band was they had this massive song. They toured the world, and then they had this one concert, and then after this concert, they were never heard of again. They all went their separate ways and never recorded again together. Some of them just completely dropped off the scene. They were just like, and it's like, what is this? And so this documentary maker is like, I want to find out the story of what happened during the making of this album. And so this is told over sort of 8 episodes, and you get these, like, as you get these sort of documentaries, when you hear about any singer, whether you have them like facing, you don't see the interviewer, you just see them facing the camera and they just talk about certain incidents. And so you see the same incident from different band members' point of view. So the whole band is sort of interviewed, and that's how you see the story progressing through these sort of interviews. And then you get the footage of them singing and recording this album. So yeah, it is based on a best-selling novel, as you probably imagine, and the book is set out exactly the same way. It is an interviewer and the interviewee. So every line it says the person's name, and then you've got like what they said, and then the next person what they said. So it is conducted like a long magazine article, but it's 20 chapters long. So the style of it is it's this series of interviews.
And how many episodes are there?
I think there's 8.
8 episodes.
And I, as always, I have to ask you, because obviously if anything is animated, I will read it. If it's anything that has been based on a book, you will read it. So I will watch it, you will watch it. Have you read the book?
Yes, I have.
All right, cool. So obviously we have a little bit of I think we're just gonna take not as good as the book as writ. We're gonna take that as this is not as good as a book, because I think anybody who reads a book and then watches it is very, very rare that you think this book is as good as the film.
Yeah.
Or this film is as good as a book. So what did you think of it then?
So ignoring the book altogether, I personally thought the story could have been told better in a shorter format. I don't think it needed 8 episodes to tell this story. I think 4, 6 possibly, but I think 8 was just too many. I think some episodes I thought there's elements that were introduced as sort of some of the storylines. I was thinking, I don't think this adds anything. I think where they've let them tell the time, I think it loses some of the impact. And to me, it was all very well played, and I think but to me, I think it dragged the story out for a lot longer than it needed. But it very well played. Sam Claflin plays Billy Dunn, who's like this charismatic rock star. At the beginning, he looked too old for the age of the character, but then he grew into the character. Because when they start, when they're like supposed to be like 19 and they're a band in the garage, it's like, you're not 19. Doesn't matter how much makeup you put on and you shave really closely, you're not 19, pal. And it was.
Sam Claflin's a weird one, though. He's always looked older than he actually is.
Yeah.
I think Sam Claflin has always looked like an old man, but which is an old, rugged, good-looking man. But he's always looked. Oh, even when he was a teenager, it was like he could have played someone who was 30. So.
So yeah, that's at the beginning. I was thinking, none of you look old enough. And then one of the guys, when you see them being interviewed like 20 years later, he looks younger then than he did actually when he was a teenager. I'm thinking, you just got this. He said, look, this isn't working well. And Daisy Jones is played by Riley Keough. Obviously the granddaughter of Elvis, the daughter of Lisa Marie Presley. So she has this sort of background. She's got a good voice, quite a good sort of rock voice. Sam Claflin, if it is his own voice, again, a good voice. The music was good. So I read an article where someone said some of the music was as good had it been released as a single, it would have done well. I didn't think so. I thought some of it was quite forgettable. But I thought, yes, it's got that rock vibe of the mid-70s, so I appreciate that. But yeah, for me, it was just a bit too long. But I did think it told the story, like this fictional band, what happens to these bands that have these massive hits and they never ever live up to that again. I was thinking like Guns N' Roses. I mean, they had this sort of like Welcome to the Jungle, that whole exploded onto rock thing. This appetite for destruction. They sort of exploded onto the scene. And then, can you name any of their subsequent albums? It's like they're still around now.
The second one, Guns N' Roses, the second one.
Yeah, I mean, I liked GNR Lies, but that was just like an EP, an extended EP. It wasn't really an album. And then other bands like Fleetwood Mac. I mean, they've been around for 50 odd years, haven't they? But after Rumours, it's like this defined your career. So they've taken this.
Actually, now you mention it, I don't think I know of any other Fleetwood Mac song that is not on Rumours.
That came out. There's a couple that they did like Stevie Nicks did individually, and I think
Stevie Nicks. I can talk about Edge of 17 and stuff like that. But
Fleetwood Mac. I only really know their big ones. You can go your own way, and I think there's one called Tusk. Which is that on that album, or is that a different one?
About tomorrow.
Oh, that one. Oh, yeah, you got that one.
Yeah. So, and it talks about how they have. I think I think everyone probably guesses that it is based loosely on, sort of Stevie Nicks and I forget the name of the lead singer.
Mick Fleetwood.
It wasn't about him. It was the lead singer because he was the drummer, wasn't he, Mick Fleetwood?
Oh,
Who
okay.
was there was
See, I
like
didn't know that. See,
yeah,
I didn't know that. I was never
well,
really, I was never
he's very
really into
charismatic
Fleetwood
and he was out there, but I know the name. I
I
can't
knew
think of
I
what his
knew
name
Mick
is.
Fleetwood because I was like, okay, the
Mac.
thing is named after him, and I knew Stevie Nicks only because I watched School of Rock and they mentioned Stevie Nicks. Apart from that, I think there's 5 members of Fleetwood Mac, and I don't know who anybody else is.
Mm.
So,
You'd know him if you saw him, and you'd think, yes, that's that look that they're trying to go for. That early sort of Mick Hutchins sort of look, where they hair
oh yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
sort of rock
Actually, I
god.
must say there's quite a few bands that have one sort of decent album, and then I mean the Kaiser Chiefs only know one album really. Don't know
Yeah,
any
I
others.
think it's a phenomenon. So the writer of the book obviously thought that would make a great story, and they have taken elements of that and made, I think, an entertaining television series. But for me, it just didn't warrant 8 episodes. I didn't feel that they were interesting enough to do that. So I
So
enjoyed it. I thought it was good, but I would still give it a 3 star
three
forever.
stars, three
Daisy
stars
Jones
for
and the
that.
Six. But I'd say
Sounds
read the book. It's an interesting book. I mean, I didn't love the book because I found the device of this interview thing a little bit trying. By the end of the book, I was just like, I'm just tired of this narrative now. I'd rather you wrote a story as a novel rather than a long magazine article. But it was I liked it. I thought it was a good story though. I
yeah,
found it. There's lots to like about the story.
yeah.
But
There's a book. There's a book I read once. I read it. You know when you go to like a youth hostel and everything like that, there's just like a whole bunch of books that are there.
yeah,
And there was a book that I read once there, and the entire book is email exchanges. And so the entire story is told through the email exchanges that people have sent in this. I can't remember what it's called. Something. I know it's not E because that's the Ivan Welsh book, but it's something like that. And the entire book is just email exchanges. I actually thought it surprisingly worked quite well. So 3 stars for that.